Adam, you got a question for us?
Financially viable.
It was said as a challenge.
Well, that's
to
the
have
key,
them
isn't
in.
it? That's why property is always a viable investment.
Hi, I'm Jess.
I'm Adam.
We are for thelandlords.com. We have a process that gives landlords more money, less hassle, and their time back.
We do indeed.
So, Adam, you got a question for us?
Yeah, so this week's show, should we call it a show today? We're going to talk about a question I got asked last week.
Yep.
Is buy-to-let still financially viable?
It was said as a challenge, I think.
Yeah, I think it probably was. Yeah. Honestly, for me, the first thing I thought was, well, actually, it's a non-question for property investors that never use mortgages. I think
that's 40% of landlords don't have a mortgage.
And I think this question, and I know this question really came from a position of the person thinking, well, I can't get a mortgage right now. Yeah. Or I can't get one at a payable interest rate that appeals to me.
Yeah,
therefore,
appeals.
It's not viable. Yeah. Well, no, because it's literally only a concern for you if you're really focusing on your mortgage payment and forgetting everything else that's good about investing in property, right? The reality is that mortgage product rates are high compared to this time last year, but you can still get a mortgage.
That speaks volumes. The fact that you can go to a bank and get a mortgage, try doing that on whatever Bitcoin, fine wine, gold, cars are, stocks and shares.
The bank will never loan you money against those things to go out ahead and buy them.
So you can go into the bank right now, get a mortgage on a property. Ironically, the stress test, that bank will be asking you to have a higher stress test, have an income on the loan versus loan higher. Let's say you're paying 6%. I've heard of stress tests as 10%. So that bank's lending you money, assuming that, or not even assuming, but banking on the fact that you can pay the mortgage every month, and they're not going to have to repossess it. And if they do repossess it, there'll be equity in there enough to have them in, and they'll still give you a loan.
They're not going to loan you money against something that they think is going to go down in value, because if they have to take it off your hands because you can't pay them back, they want their money back.
Correct.
And that is the key thing for me. That's why property is always a viable investment.
Yeah. So you're saying, well, first of all, is property a viable investment? Take away mortgages, it's as viable as it always has been. In fact, maybe more so, because the rents are higher versus the property value. Perhaps the yields are going up.
People were buying property, converted them to flats, rented them out as houses, long before buy-to-let mortgages were even a thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Really, before they were even a twinkle in an investor's eye. We had HMOs in ancient Rome.
Ancient Rome,
yeah. There you go.
2,000 years ago.
So look, the reality is, capital growth is why every millionaire, billionaire has a property portfolio, regardless of how they made their money.
Absolutely, yeah.
They invest some of it back into property.
We always do, like I always do, and I'll encourage any of you to do it, and our landlords are the same. You buy a property, you know what you paid for it, and periodically you're going to revalue it. The best time to revalue it is when you refinance it, because somebody will do it for you. So if you do it this way around so that the graph works the right way around the screen, but you've got a day dot, and every 2 to 5 years you've got another line. Every time you do it, put the dot in and draw it all the way back. You can go through the other lines if you like, but more importantly, just draw back to day dot. You know how many years you've owned it, and you know how much it's gone up in value, and divide that into the years. So you've got an average capital growth per year. I do that on every property I own, and every time I refinance it. I'm lazy, I don't do it every year, I just do it every time I refinance it. I can tell you now that the average rents, the kind of properties that I buy, 10 years ago, they might have rented out for £400 a month. They're probably renting out for £8,000, £9,000, £1,000 a month now. But the capital growth on those properties spread out through all of those years is well over £1,000, more like £1,500 for every single property per month. That means that the capital growth is more than twice as much as the rent. Is property financially viable? It's a non-question if you haven't got a mortgage.
Yeah.
But it's also a non-question if you look at it like that. It's not about the monthly cash flow. Yeah. It's about the capital growth over the long term. Property prices roughly double every, you say 10 to 11 years, something like that, but whatever. 10 years, 100 grand, 200 grand, 400 grand, 800 grand. It's the magic of property.
And I think the key is that even in a perceived property downturn, or even what you crash. I mean, the property's never really crashed compared to how stocks.
Even in the crash, it didn't crash. Yeah,
No.
compared to stocks and shares.
They'll still give you a mortgage even then.
Yeah. Can a property half in value in an afternoon? No. It's never halved in value ever. The highest or the lowest, the biggest drop has ever been is about 13%. Depends on which metrics you read, but 2008 most people would have it going down 13% in an entire year. And
even in that time, there were property in some places going up.
I bought houses in areas where it was going down, by 13% maybe, but other areas they're going up still.
I mentioned to someone recently is take everything away that's happening now and look at what a house on a particular street cost in 2008. Do you wish you'd bought it then?
Yeah.
Even though and they'd say yes, because it's worth more now.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to look at it, mind. Copy the rich guys.
Copy the rich guys. Two caveats, and if the long-term game is capital growth, the short-term game has got to be about cash flow, because you've got to stay in the game to get the capital growth. So two caveats: you've got to buy the right house.
Yeah.
It is possible to buy a house that is, let's say, long-term financially viable. It's going to work. You're going to look at it in 20 years' time and it's going to make you great capital growth, but you didn't manage to hold on to it because you did want to get a mortgage or it didn't rent out for much. You've got to buy the right house. So right house for the right price that rents for the right amount of money so that the yield looks right. We are, sounds like a bit of a boastful thing, but we are the UK's #1 property source. So we're specialists at finding those kind of properties. So if you need to know more, be in touch or have a little dig around our YouTube website or website itself, and you'll see all sorts of examples of the kind of houses that work.
There'll be a link below this video to our website, to an opportunity to book to meet us on a discovery call. Come and do that. We'd like to get all your property related questions answered, right? Absolutely.
There's one other thing that I think is a caveat. First caveat is buy the right house. Second one is do get your tax position sorted, get your actual structure sorted, because that can have, I've seen landlords where everything, structurally with the portfolio, it's the right house, right rent, everything's looking tickety-boo, but actually the profit that's coming at the end of it isn't quite where they wanted it to be. Fingers crossed they'll stay in it for the long term, the next 10, 20 years, and the capital growth will be the thing that makes them a millionaire. But get your structure right, and that can make a massive difference. And again, in the call that Adam was talking about, the discovery call, the success call, we'll go through your options there and help you out and put you in the right direction to make sure that right house, right yield, keep it for the long term, get the capital growth, and you pay the right tax rate and everything's set up correctly. So there's a link in the button and in the bottom, depends where you're watching this, but there'll be, click on something, it'll be the right thing, it'll take you to the page. Book a call and come and see us.
Subscribe, share the video, tell your mates, tell your friends, and maybe see some of you soon.
Appreciate it. Bye for now.
Cheers.
For the landlords.com, who's in the next bit? You?
Go on.
Oh yeah, we
started.
Have a process to save landlords their time, give them their time. Come on.
Blooper.